Section 99 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Poetry, a Rhapsody, 1733. All human race would fain be wits, and millions miss for one that hits. Young's universal passion, pride, was never known to spread so wide. Say, Britain, could you ever boast 3 poets in an age at most? Our chilling climate hardly bears a sprig of bays in 50 years, while every fool his claim alleges, as if it grew in common hedges. What reason can there be assigned for this perverseness in the mind? Brutes find out where their talents lie, a bear will not attempt to fly, a foundered horse will oft debate before he tries a 5-barr'd gate, a dog by instinct turns aside who sees the ditch too deep and wide. But man we find the only creature who, led by folly, combats nature; who, when she loudly cries forbear, with obstinacy fixes there, and where his genius least inclines, absurdly bends his whole designs. Not empire to the rising sun, by valour, conduct, fortune won; not highest wisdom in debates, for framing laws to govern states; not skill in sciences profound, so large to grasp the circle round; such heavenly influence require, as how to strike the Muses' lyre. Not beggar's brat on bulk begot, not bastard of a pedlar Scot; not boy brought up to cleaning shoes, the spawn of Bridewell or the Stews; not infants dropp'd the spurious pledges of gipsies litter'd under hedges, are so disqualified by fate to rise in church, or law, or state, as he whom Phoebus in his ire has blasted with poetic fire. What hope of custom in the fair, while not a soul demands your ware? Where you have nothing to produce for private life or public use? Court, city, country, want you not; you cannot bribe, betray, or plot. For poets law makes no provision, the wealthy have you in derision. Of state affairs you cannot smatter, are awkward when you try to flatter. Your portion, taking Britain round, was just 1 annual £100. Now not so much as in remainder, since Cibber brought in an attainder. For ever fixed by right divine, a monarch's right, on Grub Street line. Poor starveling bard, how small thy gains, how unproportion'd to thy pains! And here a simile comes pat in, though chickens take a month to fatten, the guests in less than half an hour will more than half a score devour. So after toiling 20 days to earn a stock of pence and praise, thy labours, grown the critic's prey, are swallow'd o'er a dish of tea. Gone to be never heard of more, gone where the chickens went before. How shall a new attempter learn of different spirits to discern? And how distinguish which is which, the poet's vein or scribbling itch? Then hear an old experienced sinner instructing thus a young beginner. Consult yourself, and if you find a powerful impulse urge your mind, impartial judge within your breast what subject you can manage best; whether your genius most inclines to satire, praise, or humorous lines; to elegies in mournful tone, or prologue sent from hand unknown. Then, rising with Aurora's light, the muse invoked, sit down to write. Blot out, correct, insert, refine, enlarge, diminish, interline. Be mindful, when invention fails, to scratch your head and bite your nails. Your poem finished, next your care is needful to transcribe it fair. In modern wit all printed trash is set off with numerous breaks and dashes. To statesmen would you give a wipe, you print it in italic type. When letters are in vulgar shapes, 'tis 10 to 1 the wit escapes. But when in capitals express'd, the dullest reader smokes the jest; or else perhaps he may invent a better than the poet meant, as learned commentators view in Homer more than Homer knew. Your poem in its modish dress, correctly fitted for the press, convey by penny post to Lintot, but let no friend alive look into't. If Lintot thinks 'twill quit the cost, you need not fear your labour lost. And how agreeably surprised are you to see it advertised! The hawker shows you one in print, as fresh as farthings from the mint, the product of your toil and sweating, a bastard of your own begetting. Be sure at Will's the following day, lie snug, and hear what critics say. And if you find the general vogue pronounces you a stupid rogue, damns all your thoughts as low and little, sit still, and swallow down your spittle. Be silent as a politician, for talking may beget suspicion; or praise the judgment of the town, and help yourself to run it down. Give up your fond paternal pride, nor argue on the weaker side; for poems read without a name we justly praise or justly blame, and critics have no partial views, except they know whom they abuse. And since you ne'er provoke their spite, depend upon't their judgment's right. But if you blab, you are undone; consider what a risk you run. You lose your credit all at once, the town will mark you for a dunce; the vilest doggerel Grub Street sends will pass for yours with foes and friends; and you must bear the whole disgrace, till some fresh blockhead takes your place. Your secret kept, your poem sunk, and sent in quires to line a trunk. If still you be disposed to rhyme, go try your hand a second time. Again you fail, yet safe's the word; take courage, and attempt a third. But first with care employ your thoughts, where critics marked your former faults. The trivial turns, the borrow'd wit, the similes that nothing fit, the cant which every fool repeats, town jests and coffee house conceits, descriptions tedious, flat, and dry, and introduced the lords know why; or where we find your fury set against the harmless alphabet, on A's and B's your malice vent, while readers wonder whom you meant. A public or a private robber, a statesman or a South Sea jobber, a prelate who no God believes, a parliament or den of thieves, a pickpurse at the bar or bench, a duchess or a suburb wench; or oft when epithets you link in gaping lines to fill a chink, like stepping stones to save a stride in streets where kennels are too wide; or like a heel piece to support a cripple with 1 foot too short; or like a bridge that joins a marish to moorlands of a different parish. So have I seen ill coupled hounds drag different ways in miry grounds. So geographers in Afric maps with savage pictures fill their gaps, and o'er unhabitable downs place elephants for want of towns. But though you miss your third essay, you need not throw your pen away. Lay now aside all thoughts of fame, to spring more profitable game. From party merit seek support; the vilest verse thrives best at court; and may you ever have the luck to rhyme almost as ill as Duck. And though you never learn'd to scan verse, come out with some lampoon on Danvers. A pamphlet in Sir Bob's defence will never fail to bring in pence; nor be concerned about the sale, he pays his workmen on the nail. Display the blessings of the nation, and praise the whole administration; extol the bench of bishops round, who at them rail, bid God confound. To bishop haters answer thus, the only logic used by us: What though they don't believe in Christ? Deny them Protestants, thou liest. A prince, the moment he is crown'd, inherits every virtue round, as emblems of the sovereign power, like other baubles in the Tower; is generous, valiant, just, and wise, and so continues till he dies. His humble senate this professes, in all their speeches, votes, addresses. But once you fix him in a tomb, his virtues fade, his vices bloom; and each perfection wrong imputed is fully at his death confuted. The loads of poems in his praise ascending make one funeral blaze. His panegyrics then are ceased; he grows a tyrant, dunce, or beast. As soon as you can hear his knell, this god on earth turns devil in hell; and lo! his ministers of state transform'd to imps his levee wait, where in the scenes of endless woe they ply their former arts below; and as they sail in Charon's boat, contrive to bribe the judge's vote. To Cerberus they give a sop, his triple barking mouth to stop; or in the ivory gate of dreams project excise and South Sea schemes; or hire their party pamphleteers to set Elysium by the ears. Then, poet, if you mean to thrive, employ your muse on kings alive; with prudence gathering up a cluster of all the virtues you can muster, which, form'd into a garland sweet, lay humbly at your monarch's feet; who, as the odours reach his throne, will smile, and think them all his own. For law and gospel both determine all virtues lodge in royal ermine. I mean the oracles of both, who shall depose it upon oath. Your garland in the following reign, change but the names, will do again. But if you think this trade too base, which seldom is the dunce's case, Put on the critic's brow, and sit At wills the puny judge of wit. A nod, a shrug, a scornful smile, With caution used, may serve a while. Proceed no further in your part, Before you learn the terms of art; For you can never be too far gone In all our modern critics' jargon. Then talk with more authentic face Of unities in time and place. Get scraps of Horace from your friends, And have them at your fingers' ends. Learn Aristotle's rules by rote, And at all hazards boldly quote. Judicious Rhymer oft review, Wise Dennis, and profound Bossu. Read all the prefaces of Dryden, For these our critics much confide in, Though merely writ at first for filling, To raise the volume's price a shilling. A forward critic often dupes us With sham quotations peri hoops us, And if we have not read Longinus, Will magisterially outshine us. Then, lest with Greek he overrun ye, Procure the book for love or money, Translated from Boileau's translation, And quote quotation on quotation. At wills you hear a poem read, Where Bat is from the table head, Reclining on his elbow chair, Gives judgment with decisive air. To whom the tribe of circling wits As to an oracle submits. He gives directions to the town, To cry it up, or run it down, Like courtiers when they send a note, Instructing members how to vote. He sets the stamp of bad and good, Though not a word be understood. Your lesson learned, you'll be secure To get the name of connoisseur; And when your merits once are known, Procure disciples of your own. For poets, you can never want 'em, Spread through Augusta Trinobantum, Computing by their pecks of coals, Amount to just 9,000 souls. These o'er their proper districts govern, Of wit and humour judges sovereign. In every street a city bard Rules like an alderman his ward. His undisputed rights extend Through all the lane from end to end. The neighbours round admire his shrewdness For songs of loyalty and lewdness. Outdone by none in rhyming well, Although he never learn'd to spell. Two bordering wits contend for glory, And one is Whig, and one is Tory. And this for epics claims the bays, And that for elegiac lays. Some famed for numbers soft and smooth, By lovers spoke in Punch's booth. And some as justly fame extols For lofty lines in Smithfield drolls. Bavius in Wapping gains renown, And Mavius reigns o'er Kentish town. Tigilius placed in Phoebus's car, From Ludgate shines to Temple Bar. Harmonious Cibber entertains The court with annual birthday strains. Whence Gay was banished in disgrace, Where Pope will never show his face. Where Young must torture his invention, To flatter knaves, or lose his pension. But these are not a thousandth part Of jobbers in the poet's art, Attending each his proper station, And all in due subordination. Through every alley to be found, In garrets high or under ground. And when they join their pericranies, Outskips a book of Miscellaneous. Hobbes clearly proves that every creature Lives in a state of war by nature. The greater for the smaller watch, But meddle seldom with their match. A whale of moderate size will draw A shoal of herrings down his maw. A fox with geese his belly crams, A wolf destroys 1,000 lambs. But search among the rhyming race, The brave are worried by the base. If on Parnassus's top you sit, You rarely bite, are always bit. Each poet of inferior size On you shall rail and criticise, And strive to tear you limb from limb, While others do as much for him. The vermin only tease and pinch Their foes superior by an inch. So naturalists observe a flea Has smaller fleas that on him prey, And these have smaller still to bite him, And so proceed ad infinitum. Thus every poet in his kind Is bit by him that comes behind, Who, though too little to be seen, Can tease and gall and give the spleen. Call dunces, fools, and sons of whores, Lay Grub Street at each other's doors. Extol the Greek and Roman masters, And curse our modern poetasters. Complain, as many an ancient bard did, How genius is no more rewarded. How wrong a taste prevails among us, How much our ancestors outsung us. Can personate an awkward scorn For those who are not poets born. And all their brother dunces lash, Who crowd the press with hourly trash. O Grub Street, how I do bemoan thee, Whose graceless children scorn to own thee. Their filial piety forgot, Deny their country like a Scot, Though by their idiom and grimace They soon betray their native place. Yet thou hast greater cause to be Ashamed of them than they of thee, Degenerate from their ancient brood, Since first the court allow'd them food. Remains a difficulty still To purchase fame by writing ill. From Flecknoe down to Howard's time, How few have reach'd the low sublime! For when our high born Howard died, Blackmore alone his place supplied. And lest a chasm should intervene, When death had finish'd Blackmore's reign, The leaden crown devolved to thee, Great poet of the hollow tree. But ah! how unsecure thy throne! 1,000 bards thy right disown. They plot to turn in factious zeal Duncinia to a commonweal, And with rebellious arms pretend An equal privilege to descend. In bulk there are not more degrees, From elephants to mites in cheese, Than what a curious eye may trace In creatures of the rhyming race. From bad to worse, and worse they fall, But who can reach the worst of all? For though in nature depth and height Are equally held infinite, In poetry the height we know, 'Tis only infinite below. For instance, when you rashly think No rhymer can like Wellsted sink, His merits balanced, you shall find The laureate leaves him far behind. Concanen, more aspiring bard, Soars downward deeper by a yard. Smart Jemmy Moore with vigour drops, The rest pursue as thick as hops. With heads to point the gulf they enter, Link'd perpendicular to the centre; And as their heels elated rise, Their heads attempt the nether skies. O what indignity and shame To prostitute the Muses' name! By flattering kings, whom heaven design'd The plagues and scourges of mankind, Bred up in ignorance and sloth, And every vice that nurses both. Perhaps you say, Augustus shines, Immortal made in Virgil's lines; And Horace brought the tuneful choir To sing his virtues on the lyre, Without reproach for flattery true, Because their praises were his due. For in those ages kings, we find, Were animals of human kind; But now go search all Europe round, Among the savage monsters crown'd With vice polluting every throne, I mean all thrones except our own. In vain you make the strictest view, To find a king in all the crew, With whom a footman out of place Would not conceive a high disgrace, A burning shame, a crying sin, To make his morning's cup of gin. Thus all are destined to obey Some beast of burthen or of prey. 'Tis sung Prometheus, forming man, Through all the brutal species ran, Each proper quality to find Adapted to a human mind; A mingled mass of good and bad, The best of worst that could be had. Then from a clay of mixture base He shaped a king to rule the race, Endow'd with gifts from every brute That best the regal nature suit. Thus think on kings: the name denotes Hogs, asses, wolves, baboons, and goats, To represent in figure just Sloth, folly, rapine, mischief, lust. O were they all but Nebuchadnezzars, What herds of kings would turn to grazers! Fair Britain, in thy monarch blest, Whose virtues bear the strictest test, Whom never faction could bespatter, Nor minister nor poet flatter; What justice in rewarding merit, What magnanimity of spirit, What lineaments divine we trace Through all his figure, mien, and face! Though peace with olive binds his hands, Confess'd the conquering hero stands. Hydaspes, Indus, and the Ganges Dread from his hand impending changes; From him the Tartar and Chinese, Short by the knees, entreat for peace. The consort of his throne and bed, A perfect goddess, born and bred, Appointed sovereign judge to sit On learning, eloquence, and wit. Our eldest hope, divine Iulus, Late, very late, O may he rule us! What early manhood has he shown, Before his downy beard was grown! Then think what wonders will be done, By going on as he begun; An heir for Britain to secure, As long as sun and moon endure. The remnant of the royal blood Comes pouring on me like a flood. Bright goddesses in number 5, Duke William, sweetest prince alive. Now sing the minister of state, Who shines alone without a mate. Observe with what majestic port This Atlas stands to prop the court, Intent the public debts to pay, Like prudent Fabius by delay. Thou great vicegerent of the king, Thy praises every muse shall sing. In all affairs thou sole director, Of wit and learning chief protector. Though small the time thou hast to spare, The church is thy peculiar care. Of pious prelates what a stock! You choose to rule the sable flock. You raise the honour of the peerage, proud to attend you at the steerage. You dignify the noble race, content yourself with humbler place. Now learning, valour, virtue, sense, to titles give the sole pretence. St. George beheld thee with delight, vouchsafe to be an azure knight, when on thy breast and sides Herculean he fix'd the star and string cerulean. Say, poet, in what other nation shone ever such a constellation? Attend, ye popes and youngs and gays, and tune your harps, and strew your bays. Your panegyrics here provide, you cannot err on flattery's side. Above the stars exalt your style, you still are low 10,000 mile. On Lewis all his bards bestow'd of incense many a thousand load. But Europe mortified his pride, and swore the fawning rascals lied. Yet what the world refused to Lewis, applied to George exactly true is. Exactly true, invidious poet, 'tis 50,000 times below it. Translate me now some lines, if you can, from Virgil, Martial, Ovid, Lucan. They would all power in heaven divide, and do no wrong on either side. They teach you how to split a hair, give George and Jove an equal share. Yet why should we be laced so strait? I'll give my monarch butter weight, and reason good for many a year, Jove never intermeddled here. Nor, though his priests be duly paid, did ever we desire his aid. We now can better do without him, since Woolston gave us arms to rout him. End of Section 99. Section 100 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Verses sent to the Dean on his birthday, with Pine's Horace finely bound, by Dr. J. Sicken. Horace speaking. You've read, sir, in poetic strain, how Varus and the Mantuan swain have on my birthday been invited, but I was forced in verse to write it. Upon a plain repast to dine, and taste my old companion wine. But I, who all punctilios hate, though long familiar with the great, nor glory in my reputation, am come without an invitation. And though I'm used to write Falernian, I'll deign for once to taste Iërnian. But fearing that you might dispute, had I put on my common suit, my breeding and my politesse, I visit in my birthday dress. My coat of purest Turkey red, with gold embroidery richly spread, to which I've sure as good pretensions as Irish lords who starve on pensions. What though proud ministers of state did at your antechamber wait? What though your Oxfords and your St. Johns have at your levee paid attendance? And Peterborough and Great Ormond, with many chiefs who now are dormant, have laid aside the general's staff, and public cares with you to laugh. Yet I some friends as good can name, nor less the darling sons of fame. For sure my Pollio and Maecenas were as good statesmen Mr. Dean as. Either your Bolingbroke or Harley, though they made Lewis beg a parley. And as for Mordaunt, your loved hero, I'll match him with my Drusus Nero. You'll boast perhaps your favourite pope, but Virgil is as good, I hope. I own indeed I can't get any to equal Helsham and Delany. Since Athens brought forth Socrates, a Grecian isle Hippocrates. Since Tully lived before my time, and Galen bless'd another clime. You'll plead, perhaps, at my request, to be admitted as a guest. Your hearing's bad, but why such fears? I speak to eyes and not to ears, and for that reason wisely took the form you see me in a book, attacked by slow devouring moths, by rage of barbarous Huns and Goths, by Bentley's notes my deadliest foes, by Creech's rhymes and Dunster's prose. I found my boasted wit in fire, in their rude hands almost expire. Yet still they but in vain assailed, for had their violence prevailed, and in a blast destroyed my frame, they would have partly missed their aim. Since all my spirit in thy page defies the Vandals of this age. 'Tis yours to save these small remains from future pedants' muddy brains, and fix my long uncertain fate. You best know how, which way? Translate. End of Section 100. Section 101 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Epigram, by Mr. Bowyer, intended to be placed under the head of Gulliver, 1733. Here learn from moral, truth and wit refined, how vice and folly have debased mankind. Strong sense and humour arm in virtue's cause, thus her great votary vindicates her laws. While bold and free the glowing colours strike, blame not the picture, if the picture's like. Section 101. Section 102 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Psyche. At 2 afternoon for our Psyche inquire, her tea kettle's on, and her smock at the fire. So loitering, so active, so busy, so idle, which has she most need of, a spur or a bridle? Thus a greyhound outruns the whole pack in a race, yet would rather be hanged than he'd leave a warm place. She gives you such plenty, it puts you in pain, but ever with prudence takes care of the main. To please you she knows how to choose a nice bit, for her taste is almost as refined as her wit. To oblige a good friend she will trace every market, it would do your heart good to see how she will cark it. Yet beware of her arts, for it plainly appears, she saves half her victuals by feeding your ears. Section 102. Section 103 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Dean and the Duke, 1734. James Bridges and the Dean had long been friends. James is beduked, of course their friendship ends. But sure the Dean deserves a sharp rebuke, for, knowing James, to boast he knows the Duke. Yet since just Heaven the Duke's ambition mocks, since all he got by fraud is lost by stocks, his wings are clipped, he tries no more in vain, with bands of fiddlers to extend his train. Since he no more can build and plant and revel, the Duke and Dean seem near upon a level. O, wert thou not a Duke, my good Duke Humphrey, from bailiff's claws thou scarce couldst keep thy bum free. A Duke to know a Dean, go smooth thy crown, thy brother, far thy better, wore a gown. Well, but a Duke thou art, so please the king, O, would his majesty but add a string. Section 103. Section 104 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Written by Dr. Swift on his own deafness, in September 1734. The Dean's complaint translated and answered. Doctor, deaf, giddy, helpless, left alone. Answer, except the first, the fault's your own. Doctor, to all my friends a burden grown. Answer, because to few you will be shewn. Give them good wine and meat to stuff, you may have company enough. Doctor, no more I hear my church's bell, than if it rang out for my knell. Answer, then write and read, 'twill do as well. Doctor, at thunder now no more I start, than at the rumbling of a cart. Answer, think then of thunder when you fart. Doctor, nay, what's incredible, alack, no more I hear a woman's clack. Answer, a woman's clack, if I have skill, sounds somewhat like a throwster's mill, but louder than a bell or thunder. That does, I own, increase my wonder. Section 104. Section 105 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Dean's manner of living. On rainy days alone I dine, upon a chick and pint of wine. On rainy days I dine alone, and pick my chicken to the bone. But this my servants much enrages, no scraps remain to save board wages. In weather fine I nothing spend, but often sponge upon a friend. Yet, where he's not so rich as I pay my club, and so goodbye. End of section 105. Section 106 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Verses made for fruit women. Apples. Come buy my fine wares, plums, apples, and pears, 100 a penny, in conscience too many. Come, will you have any? My children are 7, I wish them in heaven. My husband a sot, with his pipe and his pot. Not a farthing will gain them, and I must maintain them. Asparagus. Ripe sparagras, fit for lad or lass, to make their water pass. Oh, 'tis pretty pickin', with the tender chicken. Onions. Come follow me by the smell, here are delicate onions to sell. I promise to use you well. They make the blood warmer, you'll feed like a farmer. For this is every cook's opinion, no savoury dish without an onion. But lest your kissing should be spoiled, your onions must be thoroughly boiled. Or else you may spare your mistress a share, the secret will never be known. She cannot discover the breath of her lover, but think it as sweet as her own. Oysters. Charming oysters, I cry, my masters come by, so plump and so fresh, so sweet is their flesh. No Colchester oyster is sweeter and moister. Your stomach they settle, and rouse up your mettle. They'll make you a dad of a lass or a lad, and madam your wife they'll please to the life. Be she barren, be she old, be she slut, or be she scold. Eat my oysters and lie near her, she'll be fruitful, never fear her. Herrings. Be not sparing, leave off swearing, buy my herring. Fresh from Malahide, better never was tried. Come eat them with pure fresh butter and mustard, their bellies are soft, as white as a custard. Come 6d. a dozen to get me some bread, or like my own herrings I soon shall be dead. Oranges. Come buy my fine oranges, sauce for your veal, and charming when squeezed in a pot of brown ale, well roasted with sugar and wine in a cup, they'll make a sweet bishop when gentlefolks sup. End of section 106. Section 107 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Rover, a Lady's Spaniel. Instructions to a Painter. Happiest of the spaniel race, painter with thy colours grace, draw his forehead large and high, draw his blue and humid eye, draw his neck so smooth and round, little neck with ribbons bound, and the muscly swelling breast, where the loves and graces rest, and the spreading even back, soft and sleek and glossy black, and the tail that gently twines like the tendrils of the vines, and the silky twisted hair shadowing thick the velvet ear, velvet ears which hanging low o'er the veiny temples flow. With a proper light and shade let the winding hoop be laid, and within that arching bower, secret circle, mystic power, in a downy slumber place, happiest of the spaniel race. While the soft respiring dame, glowing with the softest flame, on the ravish'd favourite pours balmy dews, ambrosial showers. With thy utmost skill express nature in her richest dress, limpid rivers smoothly flowing, orchards by those rivers blowing, curling woodbine, myrtle shade, and the gay enamelled mead, where the linnets sit and sing, little sportlings of the spring, where the breathing field and grove soothe the heart and kindle love. Here for me and for the muse colours of resemblance choose, make of lineaments divine daply female spaniels shine, pretty fondlings of the fair, gentle damsels' gentle care. But to one alone impart all the flattery of thy art. Crowd each feature, crowd each grace, which complete the desperate face. Let the spotted wanton dame feel a new resistless flame. Let the happiest of his race win the fair to his embrace. But in shade the rest conceal, nor to sight their joys reveal, lest the pencil and the muse lose desires and thoughts infuse. End of section 107. Section 108 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Epigrams on Windows, several of them written in 1726. 1. On a window at an inn. We fly from luxury and wealth to hardships in pursuit of health, from generous wines and costly fare, and dozing in an easy chair. Pursue the goddess Health in vain, to find her in a country sane, and everywhere her footsteps trace, and see her marks in every face. And still her favourites we meet, crowding the roads with naked feet. But oh, so faintly we pursue, we ne'er can have her full in view. 2. At an inn in England. The glass by lovers' nonsense blurred dims and obscures our sight. So when our passions love has stirred, it darkens reason's light. 3. On a window at the Four Crosses in the Watling Street Road, Warwickshire. Fool, to put up 4 crosses at your door! Put up your wife, she's crosser than all 4. 4. Another at Chester. The church and clergy here, no doubt, are very near akin. Both weather-beaten are without, and empty both within. 5. Another at Chester. My landlord is civil, but dear as the devil. Your pockets grown empty, with nothing to tempt ye. The wine is so sour, 'twill give you a scour. The beer and the ale are mingled with stale. The veal is such carrion, a dog would be wary on. All this I have felt, for I live on a smelt. 6. Another at Chester. The walls of this town are full of renown, and strangers delight to walk round 'em. But as for the dwellers, both buyers and sellers, for me you may hang 'em or drown 'em. 7. Another written upon a window where there was no writing before. Thanks to my stars, I once can see a window here from scribbling free. Here no conceited coxcombs pass to scratch their paltry drabs on glass, nor paltry fool is calling names, or dealing crowns to George and James. 8. On seeing verses written upon windows at inns. The sage who said he should be proud of windows in his breast, because he ne'er a thought aloud that might not be confessed. His window scrawled by every rake, his breast again would cover, and fairly bid the devil take the diamond and the lover. 8. On seeing verses written upon windows at inns. The sage who said he should be proud of windows in his breast, because he ne'er a thought aloud that might not be confessed. His window scrawled by every rake, his breast again would cover, and fairly bid the devil take the diamond and the lover. 9. Another. By Satan taught, all conjurers know your mistress in a glass to show, and you can do as much. In this the devil and you agree, none e'er made verses worse than he, and thine, I swear, are such. 10. Another. That love is the devil, I'll prove when required. Those rhymers abundantly show it. They swear that they all by love are inspired, and the devil's a damnable poet. 11. Another at Holyhead. O Neptune, Neptune, must I still be here detained against my will? Is this your justice, when I'm come above 200 miles from home? O'er mountains steep, o'er dusty plains, half choked with dust, half drowned with rains? only your godship to implore, to let me kiss your other shore. A boon so small, but I may weep, while you're like Ball fast asleep. End of section 108. Section 109 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. To Janus on New Year's Day, 1726. Two-faced Janus, god of time, be my Phoebus while I rhyme. To oblige your crony Swift, bring our dame a New Year's gift. She has got but half a face, Janus, since thou hast a brace. To my lady once be kind, give her half thy face behind. God of time, if you be wise, look not with your future eyes. What imports thy forward sight? Well, if you could lose it quite, can you take delight in viewing this poor isle's approaching ruin, when thy retrospection vast sees the glorious ages past? Happy nation, were we blind, or had only eyes behind! Drown you morals, madam cries, I'll have none but forward eyes. Prudes decay'd about may tack, strain their necks with looking back. Give me time when coming on, who regards him when he's gone? By the Dean, though gravely told, New Year's help to make me old, yet I find a New Year's lace burnishes an old year's face. Give me velvet and quadrille, I'll have youth and beauty still. End of section 109. Section 110 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. A motto for Mr. Jason Hassard, woolen draper in Dublin, whose sign was the Golden Fleece. Jason, the valiant prince of Greece, from Colchis brought the Golden Fleece. We comb the wool, refine the stuff, for modern Jasons that's enough. O, could we tame yon watchful dragon, old Jason would have less to brag on. To a friend who had been much abused in many inveterate libels. The greatest monarch may be stabbed by night, and fortune help the murderer in his flight. The vilest ruffian may commit a rape, yet safe from injured innocence escape. And calumny by working underground can unrevenged the greatest merit wound. What's to be done? Shall wit and learning choose to live obscure, and have no fame to lose? By censure frighted out of honour's road, nor dare to use the gifts by heaven bestowed? Or fearless enter in through virtue's gate, and buy distinction at the dearest rate? Catullus de Lesbia. Lesbia for ever on me rails, to talk of me she never fails. Now hang me, but for all her art, I find that I have gained her heart. My proof is this, I plainly see, the case is just the same with me. I curse her every hour sincerely, yet hang me, but I love her dearly. On a curate's complaint of hard duty. I march'd 3 miles through scorching sand, with zeal in heart and notes in hand. I rode 4 more to great St. Mary, using 4 legs when 2 were weary. To 3 fair virgins I did tie men, in the close bands of pleasing hymen. I dipp'd 2 babes in holy water, and purified their mother after. Within an hour and eke a half, I preach'd 3 congregations deaf. Their thundering out with lungs long winded, I chopp'd so fast that few there minded. My emblem, the laborious sun, saw all these mighty labours done, before one race of his was run. All this perform'd by Robert Hewitt, what mortal else could e'er go through it? To Betty the Grisette. Queen of wit and beauty, Betty, never may the muse forget ye. How thy face charms every shepherd, spotted over like a leopard; and thy freckled neck display'd, envy breeds in every maid. Like a fly blown cake of tallow, or on parchment ink turn'd yellow, or a tawny speckled pippin, shrivelled with a winter's keeping. And thy beauty thus dispatch'd, let me praise thy wit unmatch'd. Sets of phrases, cut and dry, evermore thy tongue supply, and thy memory is loaded with old scraps from plays exploded, stock'd with repartees and jokes, suited to all Christian folks, shreds of wit in senseless rhymes, blunder'd out 1,000 times. Nor wilt thou of gifts be sparing, which can ne'er be worse for wearing. Picking wit among collegians in the playhouse upper regions, where in the 18-penny gallery Irish nymphs learn Irish raillery. But thy merit is thy failing, and thy raillery is railing. Thus with talents well endued, to be scurrilous and rude, when you pertly raise your snout, fleer and jibe, and laugh and flout. This among Hibernian asses for sheer wit and humour passes. Thus indulgent Chloe bit swears you have a world of wit. Epigram from the French. Who can believe with common sense a bacon slice gives God offence? Or how a herring has a charm Almighty vengeance to disarm? Wrapp'd up in majesty divine, does he regard on what we dine? Epigram. As Thomas was cudgell'd one day by his wife, he took to the street and fled for his life. Tom's 3 dearest friends came by in the squabble, and saved him at once from the shrew and the rabble. Then ventured to give him some sober advice; but Tom is a person of honour so nice, too wise to take counsel, too proud to take warning, that he sent to all 3 a challenge next morning. 3 duels he fought, thrice ventured his life, went home, and was cudgell'd again by his wife. Epigram, added by Stella. When Marjorie chastises Ned, she calls it combing of his head. A kinder wife was never born. She combs his head, and finds him horn. Joan cudgels Ned. Joan cudgels Ned, yet Ned's a bully. Will cudgels Bess, yet Will's a cully. Die, Ned and Bess, give Will to Joan. She dares not say her life's her own. Die, Joan and Will, give Bess to Ned, and every day she combs his head. Verses on 2 celebrated modern poets. Behold those monarch oaks that rise With lofty branches to the skies, Have large proportion'd roots that grow With equal longitude below. 2 bards that now in fashion reign Most aptly this device explain. If this to clouds and stars will venture, that creeps as far to reach the centre. Or more to show the thing I mean, have you not o'er a saw pit seen? A skill'd mechanic that has stood high on a length of prostrate wood, who hired a subterraneous friend to take his iron by the end. But which excell'd was never found, the man above or under ground. The moral is so plain to hit, that, had I been the god of wit, then in a saw pit and wet weather should young and Phillips drudge together. Epitaph on General Gorges and Lady Meath. Under this stone lies Dick and Dolly. Doll dying first, Dick grew melancholy, for Dick without Doll thought living a folly. Dick lost in Doll a wife tender and dear, but Dick lost by Doll 1200 a year. A loss that Dick thought no mortal could bear. Dick sighed for his Doll, and his mournful arms cross'd, thought much of his Doll, and the jointure he lost. The first vex'd him much, the other vex'd most. Thus loaded with grief, Dick sighed and he cried. To live without both full 3 days he tried, but liked neither loss, and so quietly died. Dick left a pattern few will copy after. Then, reader, pray shed some tears of salt water, for so sad a tale is no subject of laughter. Meath smiles for the jointure, though gotten so late. The son laughs that got the hard gotten estate, and Cuff grins for getting the Alicant plate. Here quiet they lie, in hopes to rise one day, both solemnly put in this hole on Sunday, and here rest, sic transit gloria mundi. Verses on I know not what. My latest tribute here I send, with this let your collection end. Thus I consign you down to fame, a character to praise or blame; and if the whole may pass for true, contented rest, you have your due. Give future time the satisfaction to leave one handle for detraction. Dr. Swift to himself on St. Cecilia's day. Grave Dean of St. Patrick's, how comes it to pass, that you, who know music, know more than an ass? That you, who so lately were writing of drapers, should lend your cathedral to players and scrapers? To act such an opera once in a year, so offensive to every true Protestant ear, with trumpets and fiddles and organs and singing, will sure the Pretender and Popery bring in. No Protestant prelate, his lordship or grace, durst there show his right or most reverend face. How would it pollute their croziers and rochets, to listen to minims and quavers and crotchets? An answer to a friend's question. The furniture that best doth please St. Patrick's Dean, good sir, are these: the knife and fork with which I eat, and next the pot that boils the meat. The next to be preferred, I think, is the glass in which I drink; the shelves on which my books I keep, and the bed on which I sleep; an antique elbow chair between, big enough to hold the Dean; and the stove that gives delight in the cold bleak wintry night. To these we add a thing below, more for use reserved than show. These are what the Dean do please, all superfluous are but these. End of section 110. Section 111 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. An Apology to Lady Carteret. A lady wise as well as fair, whose conscience always was her care, thoughtful upon a point of moment, would have the text as well as comment. So, hearing of a grave divine, she sent to bid him come to dine. But you must know he was not quite so grave as to be unpolite; thought human learning would not lessen the dignity of his profession; and if you'd heard the man discourse or preach, you'd like him scarce the worse. He long had bid the court farewell, retreating silent to his cell, suspected for the love he bore to one who sway'd some time before; which made it more surprising how he should be sent for thither now. The message told, he gapes and stares, and scarce believes his eyes or ears; could not conceive what it should mean, and fain would hear it told again. But then the squire so trim and nice, 'twere rude to make him tell it twice; so bowed, was thankful for the honour, and would not fail to wait upon her. His beaver brushed, his shoes and gown, away he trudges into town, passes the lower castle yard, and now advancing to the guard, he trembles at the thoughts of state, for, conscious of his sheepish gait, his spirits of a sudden failed him, he stopped, and could not tell what ailed him. What was the message I received? Why, certainly the captain raved. To dine with her, and come at 3? Impossible, it can't be me. Or may be I mistook the word. My lady, it must be my lord. My lord's abroad, my lady too. What must the unhappy doctor do? Is Captain Crasherode here, pray? No. Nay, then 'tis time for me to go. Am I awake, or do I dream? I'm sure he called me by my name, named me as plain as he could spake, and yet there must be some mistake. Why, what a jest should I have been, had now my lady been within! What could I've said? I'm mighty glad she went abroad, she'd thought me mad. The hour of dining now is past, well then, I'll e'en go home and fast. And since I 'scaped being made a scoff, I think I'm very fairly off. My lady now returning home, calls, Crasherode, is the doctor come? He had not heard of him. Pray see, 'tis now 3:15. The captain walks about and searches through all the rooms and courts and arches, examines all the servants round, in vain, no doctor's to be found. My lady could not choose but wonder. Captain, I fear you've made some blunder; but pray to morrow go at 10.
I'll try his manners once again. If rudeness be the effect of knowledge, my son shall never see a college. The captain was a man of reading, and much good sense as well as breeding, who, loath to blame or to incense, said little in his own defence. Next day another message brought. The doctor, frightened at his fault, is dressed and stealing through the crowd, now pale as death, then blush'd and bowed, panting and faltering, hummed and hawed. Her ladyship was gone abroad. The captain too, he did not know whether he ought to stay or go. Begged she'd forgive him. In conclusion, my lady, pitying his confusion, called her good nature to relieve him, told him she thought she might believe him, and would not only grant his suit, but visit him, and eat some fruit, provided at a proper time he told the real truth in rhyme. 'Twas to no purpose to oppose, she'd heard of no excuse in prose. The doctor stood not to debate, glad to compound at any rate, so, bowing, seemingly complied, though if he durst he had denied. But first resolved to show his taste, was too refined to give a feast. He'd treat with nothing that was rare, but winding walks and purer air. Would entertain without expense, or pride, or vain magnificence, for well he knew to such a guest the plainest meals must be the best. To stomachs clogged with costly fare, simplicity alone is rare, while high and nice and curious meats are really but vulgar treats. Instead of spoils of Persian looms, the costly boast of regal rooms, thought it more courtly and discreet to scatter roses at her feet, roses of richest dye that shone with native lustre like her own, beauty that needs no aid of art through every sense to reach the heart. The gracious dame, though well she knew all this was much beneath her due, liked everything, at least thought fit to praise it par manière d'acquit. Yet she, though seeming pleased, can't bear the scorching sun or chilling air, disturbed alike at both extremes, whether he shows or hides his beams. Though seeming pleased at all she sees, starts at the ruffling of the trees, and scarce can speak for want of breath, in half a walk fatigued to death. The doctor takes his hint from hence, to apologize his late offence. Madam, the mighty power of use now strangely pleads in my excuse. If you, unused, have scarcely strength to gain this walk's untoward length, if frightened at a scene so rude, through long disuse of solitude, if, long confined to fires and screens, you dread the waving of these greens, if you, who long have breathed the fumes of city fogs and crowded rooms, do now solicitously shun the cooler air and dazzling sun, if his majestic eye you flee, learn hence to excuse and pity me. Consider what it is to bear the powder'd courtier's witty snare, to see the important man of dress scoffing my college awkwardness, to be the strutting cornet's sport, to run the gauntlet of the court, winning my way by slow approaches through crowds of coxcombs and of coaches, from the first fierce cockaded sentry, quite through the tribe of waiting gentry, to pass so many crowded stages, and stand the staring of your pages, and after all, to crown my spleen, be told you are not to be seen, or if you are, be forced to bear the awe of your majestic air. And can I then be faulty found in dreading this vexatious round? Can it be strange if I eschew a scene so glorious and so new? Or is he criminal that flies the living lustre of your eyes?
End of section 111. Section 112 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
The Birth of Manly Virtue. Inscribed to Lord Carteret, 1724. Once on a time, a righteous sage, grieved with the vices of the age, applied to Jove with fervent prayer, O Jove, if virtue be so fair, as it was deemed in former days by Plato and by Socrates, whose beauties mortal eyes escape only for want of outward shape, make then its real excellence for once the theme of human sense, So shall the eye, by form confined, direct and fix the wandering mind, and long deluded mortals see With rapture what they used to flee. Jove grants the prayer, gives Virtue birth, And bids him bless and mend the earth. Behold him blooming fresh and fair, Now made, ye gods, a son and heir; An heir, and stranger yet to hear, An heir, an orphan of a peer. But prodigies are wrought to prove Nothing impossible to Jove. Virtue was for this sex design'd, In mild reproof to womankind; In manly form to let them see The loveliness of modesty; The thousand decencies that shone With lessen'd lustre in their own, Which few had learn'd enough to prize, And some thought modish to despise. To make his merit more discern'd, He goes to school, he reads, is learn'd. Raised high above his birth by knowledge, He shines distinguish'd in a college; Resolved nor honour nor estate Himself alone should make him great. Here soon for every art renown'd, His influence is diffused around; The inferior youth to learning led, Less to be famed than to be fed. Behold the glory he has won, And blush to see themselves outdone; And now, inflamed with rival rage, In scientific strife engage, and, in the glorious strife, The arts new kindle into life. Here would our hero ever dwell, Fix'd in a lonely learned cell, Contented to be truly great In virtue's best beloved retreat. Contented he, but fate ordains He now shall shine in nobler scenes, Raised high like some celestial fire, To shine the more, still rising higher; Completely form'd in every part, To win the soul and glad the heart; The powerful voice, the graceful mien, Lovely alike or heard or seen; The outward form and inward vie, His soul bright beaming from his eye; Ennobling every act and air, With just and generous and sincere. Accomplish'd thus, his next resort Is to the council and the court, Where virtue is in least repute, And interest the one pursuit; Where right and wrong are bought and sold, Barter'd for beauty and for gold. Here manly virtue, even here, Pleased in the person of a peer; a scarcely bearded youth, Who talk'd of justice and of truth, Of innocence the surest guard, Tales here forgot or yet unheard; That he alone deserved esteem, Who was the man he wish'd to seem; Call'd it unmanly and unwise To lurk behind a mean disguise; Give fraudful vice the mask and screen, 'Tis virtue's interest to be seen; Call'd want of shame a want of sense, And found in blushes eloquence. Thus acting what he taught so well, He drew dumb merit from her cell; Led with amazing art along The bashful dame, and loosed her tongue; And while he made her value known, Yet more display'd and raised his own. Thus young, thus proof to all temptations, He rises to the highest stations; For where high honour is the prize, True virtue has a right to rise. Let courtly slaves low bend the knee To wealth and vice in high degree; Exalted worth disdains to owe Its grandeur to its greatest foe. Now raised on high, see virtue shows The godlike ends for which he rose; For him let proud ambition know The height of glory here below. Grandeur by goodness made complete, To bless is truly to be great. He taught how men to honour rise, Like gilded vapours to the skies; Which howsoever they display Their glory from the god of day, Their noblest use is to abate His dangerous excess of heat; To shield the infant fruits and flowers, And bless the earth with genial showers. Now change the scene, a nobler care Demands him in a higher sphere; Distress of nations calls him hence, Permitted so by Providence; For models made to mend our kind To no one clime should be confined; And manly virtue, like the sun, His course of glorious toils should run, Alike diffusing in his flight Congenial joy, and life, and light. Pale envy sickens, error flies, And discord in his presence dies; Oppression hides with guilty dread, And merit rears her drooping head. The arts revive, the valleys sing, And winter softens into spring; The wondering world, where'er he moves, With new delight looks up and loves. one sex consenting to admire, nor less the other to desire; while he, though seated on a throne, confines his love to one alone. The rest, condemn'd with rival voice, repining do applaud his choice. Fame now reports, the Western Isle is made his mansion for a while, whose anxious natives, night and day, happy beneath his righteous sway, weary the gods with ceaseless prayer to bless him and to keep him there, and claim it as a debt from fate, too lately found, to lose him late.
End of section 112. Section 113 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. On Paddy's character of the Intelligencer, 1729. As a thorn bush or oaken bough, stuck in an Irish cabin's brow, above the door at country fair, betokens entertainment there, so bays on poets' brows have been set for a sign of wit within. And as ill neighbours in the night pull down an alehouse bush for spite, the laurel so, by poets worn, is by the teeth of envy torn. Envy, a canker worm, which tears those sacred leaves that lightning spares. And now to exemplify this moral, Tom, having earned a twig of laurel, which measured on his head was found, not long enough to reach half round, but like a girl's cockade was tied, a trophy on his temple side. Paddy repined to see him wear this badge of honour in his hair, and thinking this cockade of wit would his own temples better fit. Forming his muse by Smedley's model, lets drive at Tom's devoted noddle, pelts him by turns with verse and prose, hums like a hornet at his nose. At length presumes to vent his satire on the Dean, Tom's honour'd friend and patron. The eagle in the tale, ye know, teased by a buzzing wasp below, took wing to Jove, and hoped to rest securely in the thunderer's breast. In vain even there to spoil his nod, the spiteful insect stung the god. End of section 113. Section 114 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. An Epistle to His Excellency John, Lord Carteret, by Dr. Delany, 1729. The wise and learned ruler of our isle, whose guardian care can all her griefs beguile, when next your generous soul shall condescend t'instruct or entertain your humble friend, whether retiring from your weighty charge, or some high theme you learnedly enlarge, of all the ways of wisdom reason well, how Richelieu rose, and how Janus fell. Or when your brow less thoughtfully unbends, circled with Swift and some delighted friends, when mixing mirth and wisdom with your wine, like that your wit shall flow, your genius shine. Nor with less praise the conversation guide, than in the public councils you decide. Or when the Dean, long privileged to rail, asserts his friends with more impetuous zeal, you hear, whilst I sit by abash'd and mute, with soft concessions shortening the dispute, then close with kind inquiries of my state. How are your tides, and have they rose of late? Why, Christchurch is a pretty situation, there are not many better in the nation. This with your other things must yield you clear some 6, at least 500 pounds a year. Suppose at such time I took the freedom to speak these truths as plainly as you read 'em. You shall rejoin my lord when I've replied, and if you please my lady shall decide. My lord, I'm satisfied you meant me well, and that I'm thankful all the world can tell. But you'll forgive me if I own the event is very short of your intent. At least I feel some ills unfelt before, my income less, and my expenses more. How, doctor, double vicar, double rector, a dignitary with a city lecture? What glebes, what dues, what tithes, what fines, what rent? Why, doctor, will you never be content? Would my good lord but cast up the account,
and see to what my revenues amount. My title's ample, but my gain so small, that one good vicarage is worth them all. And very wretched sure is he that's double in nothing but his titles and his trouble. And to this crying grievance, if you please, my horses founder'd on Fermanagh ways, ways of well polish'd and well pointed stone, where every step endangers every bone. And more to raise your pity and your wonder, to churches 12 Hibernian miles asunder, with complicated cures I labour harden, beside whole summers absent from my garden. But that the world would think I play'd the fool, I'd change with Charlie Grattan for his school. What fine cascades, what vistos I might make, fix'd in the centre of the Ionian lake! There might I sail delighted, smooth, and safe, beneath the conduct of my good Sir Ralph. There's not a better steerer in the realm, I hope, my lord, you'll call him to the helm. Doctor, a glorious scheme to ease your grief, when cures are cross, a school's a sure relief. You cannot fail of being happy there, the lake will be the lethe of your care. The scheme is for your honour and your ease, and, doctor, I'll promote it when you please. Meanwhile, allowing things below your merit, yet, doctor, you've a philosophic spirit. Your wants are few, and like your income small, and you've enough to gratify them all. You've trees and fruits and roots enough in store, and what would a philosopher have a more? You cannot wish for coaches, kitchens, cooks. My lord, I've not enough to buy me books. Or pray suppose my wants were all supplied, are there no wants I should regard beside? Whose breast is so unmanned as not to grieve, compassed with miseries he can't relieve? Who can be happy, who should wish to live, and want the godlike happiness to give? That I'm a judge of this you must allow, I had it once, and I'm debarred it now. Ask your own heart, my lord, if this be true, then how unblest am I, how blest are you? 'Tis true, but, doctor, let us waive all that. Say, if you had your wish, what you'd be at? Excuse me, good my lord, I won't be sounded, nor shall your favour by my wants be bounded. My lord, I challenge nothing as my due, nor is it fit I should prescribe to you. Yet this might Symmachus himself avow, whose rigid rules are antiquated now. My lord, I'd wish to pay the debts I owe, I'd wish beside to build and to bestow.
End of section 114. Section 115 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. An epistle upon an epistle, from a certain doctor to a certain great lord, being a Christmas box for Dr. Delany. As Jove will not attend on less, when things of more importance press, you can't, grave sir, believe it hard, that you, a low Hibernian bard, should cool your heels a while and wait, unanswer'd at your patron's gate. And would my lord vouchsafe to grant this one poor humble boon I want, free leave to play his secretary, as Falstaff acted old King Harry. I tell of yours in rhyme and print, folks shrug and cry, there's nothing in't. And after several readings over, it shines most in the marble cover. How could so fine a taste dispense with mean degrees of wit and sense? Nor will my lord so far beguile the wise and learned of our isle, to make it pass upon the nation by dint of his sole approbation. The task is arduous, patrons find, to warp the sense of all mankind, who think your muse must first aspire, ere he advance the doctor higher. You've cause to say he meant you well, that you are thankful, who can tell? For still you're short, which grieves your spirit, of his intent, you mean your merit. A quanto rectius tu adepti, qui nil moleris tarn inepti? Smedley, thou Jonathan of Clogher, when thou thy humble lay dost offer to Grafton's grace with grateful heart, thy thanks and verse devoid of art, content with what his bounty gave, no larger income dost thou crave.
But you must have cascades and all, Ierney's lake for your canal, your Visto's barges, and a pox on all pride our speaker for your coxswain. It's pity that he can't bestow you 12 commoners in caps to row you. Thus Edgar proud in days of yore held monarchs labouring at the oar, and as he passed, so swell'd the Dee, enraged as Erin would do at thee. How different is this from Smedley, his name is up, he may in bed lie, who only asks some pretty cure in wholesome soil and ether pure, the garden stored with artless flowers, in either angle shady bowers. No gay parterre with costly green must in the ambient hedge be seen, but nature freely takes her course, nor fears him from ungrateful force. No shears to check her sprouting vigour, or shape the yews to antic figure. But you, forsooth, your all must squander on that poor spot called Delville yonder; and when you've been at vast expenses in whims, parterres, canals, and fences, your assets fail, and cash is wanting, no farther buildings, farther planting. No wonder, when you raise and level, think this wall low and that wall bevel. Here a convenient box you found, which you demolish'd to the ground, then built, then took up with your arbour, and set the house to Rupert Barber. You sprang an arch, which, in a scurvy humour, you tumbled topsy turvy. You changed a circle to a square, then to a circle as you were. Who can imagine whence the fund is, that you quadrata change rotundis? To Fame a temple you erect, a Flora does the dome protect. Mounts walks on high, and in a hollow you place the Muses and Apollo, there shining midst his train to grace your whimsical poetic place. These stories were of old design'd as fables, but you have refined the poet's mythologic dreams to real Muses, gods, and streams. Who would not swear, when you contrive thus, that your Don Quixote redivivus? Beneath a dry canal there lies, which only winter's rain supplies. O, couldst thou by some magic spell hither convey St. Patrick's well! Here may it reassume its stream, and take a greater Patrick's name. If your expenses rise so high, what income can your wants supply? Yet still you fancy you inherit a fund of such superior merit, that you can't fail of more provision, all by my lady's kind decision. For the more livings you can fish up, you think you'll sooner be a bishop. That could not be my lord's intent, nor can it answer the event. Most think what has been heaped on you to other sort of folk was due. Rewards too great for your flim flams, epistles, riddles, epigrams. Though now your depth must not be sounded, the time was when you'd have compounded for less than Charley Grattan's school. 500 a year's no fool. Take this advice then from your friend, to your ambition put an end. Be frugal, Pat, pay what you owe, before you build and you bestow. Be modest, nor address your betters with begging vain familiar letters. A passage may be found, I've heard, in some old Greek or Latian bard, which says, would crows in silence eat their offals or their better meat, their generous feeders not provoking by loud and inharmonious croaking, they might, unhurt by envy's claws, live on, and stuff to boot their maws.
End of section 115. Section 116 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
A libel on the Reverend Dr. Delany and his Excellency John Lord Carteret, 1729. Deluded mortals, whom the great choose for companions tête à tête, who at their dinners en famille get leave to sit whene'er you will, then boasting tell us where you dined, and how his lordship was so kind, how many pleasant things he spoke, and how you laughed at every joke. Swear he's a most facetious man, that you and he are cup and can. You travel with a heavy load, and quite mistake preferment's road. Suppose my lord and you alone hint the least interest of your own, his visage drops, he knits his brow, he cannot talk of business now. Or mention but a vacant post, he'll turn it off with, name your toast. Nor could the nicest artist paint a countenance with more constraint. For, as their appetites to quench, lords keep a pimp to bring a wench. So men of wit are but a kind of panders to a vicious mind, who proper objects must provide to gratify their lust of pride. When wearied with intrigues of state, they find an idle hour to prate. Then shall you dare to ask a place, you forfeit all your patron's grace, and disappoint the sole design for which he summoned you to dine. Thus Congreve spent in writing plays, and one poor office half his days; while Montague, who claim'd the station to be Maecenas of the nation, for poets open table kept, but ne'er consider'd where they slept. Himself as rich as 50 Jews, was easy though they wanted shoes; and crazy Congreve scarce could spare a shilling to discharge his chair. Till prudence taught him to appeal from Pian's fire to party zeal, not owing to his happy vein, the fortunes of his later scene took proper principles to thrive, and so might every dunce alive. Thus Steele, who own'd what others writ, and flourish'd by imputed wit, from perils of 100 jails, withdrew to starve and die in Wales. Thus Gay, the hare with many friends, twice 7 long years the court attends, who under tales conveying truth, to virtue form'd a princely youth; who paid his courtship with the crowd, as far as modest pride allow'd, rejects a servile usher's place, and leaves St. James's in disgrace. Thus Addison, by lords caress'd, was left in foreign lands distress'd; forgot at home, became for hire a travelling tutor to a squire; but wisely left the Muses' hill, to business shaped the poet's quill, let all his barren laurels fade, took up himself the courtier's trade, and grown a minister of state, saw poets at his levee wait. Hail, happy Pope! whose generous mind, detesting all the statesman kind, contemning courts at courts unseen, refused the visits of a queen. A soul with every virtue fraught, by sages, priests, or poets taught, whose filial piety excels whatever Grecian story tells. A genius for all stations fit, whose meanest talent is his wit; his heart too great, though fortune little, to lick a rascal statesman's spittle; appealing to the nation's taste, above the reach of want is placed; by Homer dead was taught to thrive, which Homer never could alive; and sits aloft on Pindus' head, despising slaves that cringe for bread. True politicians only pay for solid work, but not for play; nor ever choose to work with tools forged up in colleges and schools. Consider how much more is due to all their journeymen than you. At table you can Horace quote, they at a pinch can bribe a vote. You show your skill in Grecian story, but they can manage Whig and Tory. You as a critic are so curious to find a verse in Virgil spurious, but they can smoke the deep designs when Bolingbroke with Pulteney dines. Besides, your patron may upbraid ye, that you have got a place already, an office for your talents fit, to flatter, carve, and show your wit, to snuff the lights and stir the fire, and get a dinner for your hire. What claim have you to place or pension? He overpays in condescension. But, reverend doctor, you we know could never condescend so low. The viceroy whom you now attend would, if he durst, be more your friend; nor will you in those gifts despise, by which himself was taught to rise. When he has virtue to retire, he'll grieve he did not raise you higher, and place you in a better station, although it might have pleased the nation. This may be true, submitting still to Walpole's more than royal will, and what condition can be worse? He comes to drain a beggar's purse, he comes to tie our chains on faster, and show us England is our master; caressing knaves and dunces wooing, to make them work their own undoing. What has he else to bait his traps, or bring his vermin in, but scraps? The offals of a church distress'd, a hungry vicarage at best, or some remote inferior post, with 40 a year at most. But here again you interpose, your favourite lord is none of those, who owe their virtues to their stations, and characters to dedications; for keep him in, or turn him out, his learning none will call in doubt. His learning, though a poet said it, before a play would lose no credit; nor Pope would dare deny him wit, although to praise it Philip's writ. I own he hates an action base, his virtues battling with his place, nor wants a nice discerning spirit betwixt a true and spurious merit; can sometimes drop a voter's claim, and give up party to his fame. I do the most that friendship can, I hate the viceroy, love the man. But you, who till your fortune's made must be a sweetener by your trade, should swear he never meant us ill. We suffer sore against his will, that if we could but see his heart, he would have chose a milder part. We rather should lament his case, who must obey or lose his place. Since this reflection slipped your pen, insert it when you write again, and to illustrate it produce this simile for his excuse. So to destroy a guilty land, an angel sent by heaven's command, while he obeys Almighty will, perhaps may feel compassion still, and wish the task had been assigned to spirits of less gentle kind. But I, in politics grown old, whose thoughts are of a different mould, who from my soul sincerely hate both kings and ministers of state, who look on courts with stricter eyes to see the seeds of vice arise, can lend you an illusion fitter, though flattering knaves may call it bitter; which, if you durst but give it place, would show you many a statesman's face. Fresh from the tripod of Apollo, I had it in the words that follow: Take notice to avoid offence, I here except his excellence. So to effect his monarch's ends, from hell a viceroy devil ascends, his budget with corruptions cramm'd, the contributions of the damn'd, which with unsparing hand he strews through courts and senates as he goes, and then at Beelzebub's black hall complains his budget was too small. Your simile may better shine in verse, but there is truth in mine; for no imaginable things can differ more than gods and kings, and statesmen by 10,000 odds are angels just as kings are gods.
End of section 116. Section 117 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
To Dr. Delany on the Libels written against him, 1729. As some raw youth in country bred, to arms by thirst of honour led, when at a skirmish first he hears the bullets whistling round his ears, will duck his head aside, will start, and feel a trembling at his heart, till 'scaping oft without a wound, lessens the terror of the sound. Fly bullets now as thick as hops, he runs into a cannon's chops. An author thus, who pants for fame, begins the world with fear and shame. When first in print you see him dread each pop gun levell'd at his head. The lead yon critic's quill contains is destined to beat out his brains, as if he heard loud thunders roll, cries, Lord have mercy on his soul! Concluding that another shot will strike him dead upon the spot. But when with squibbing, flashing, popping, he cannot see one creature dropping, that, missing fire or missing aim, his life is safe, I mean his fame, the danger past takes heart of grace, and looks a critic in the face. Though splendour gives the fairest mark to poison'd arrows in the dark, yet in yourself, when smooth and round, they glance aside without a wound. 'Tis said the gods tried all their art, how pain they might from pleasure part; but little could their strength avail, both still are fasten'd by the tail. Thus fame and censure with a tether by fate are always link'd together. Why will you aim to be preferr'd in wit before the common herd, and yet grow mortified and vex'd to pay the penalty annexed? 'Tis eminence makes envy rise, as fairest fruits attract the flies. Should stupid libels grieve your mind, you soon a remedy may find. Lie down obscure, like other folks, below the lash of snarlers' jokes. Their faction is 500 odds, for every coxcomb lends them rods, and sneers as learnedly as they, like females o'er their morning tea. You say the muse will not contain, and write you must, or break a vein. Then if you find the terms too hard, no longer my advice regard, but raise your fancy on the wing, the Irish senate's praises sing, how jealous of the nation's freedom, and for corruptions how they weed 'em. How each the public good pursues, how far their hearts from private views, make all true patriots up to shoe boys, huzza their brethren at the Blue Boys. Thus grown a member of the club, no longer dread the rage of grub. How oft am I for rhyme to seek, to dress a thought I toil a week, and then how thankful to the town, if all my pains will earn a crown, while every critic can devour my work and me in half an hour. Would men of genius cease to write, the rogues must die for want and spite, must die for want of food and raiment, if scandal did not find them payment. How cheerfully the hawkers cry, a satire, and the gentry buy, while my hard labour'd poem pines unsold upon the printer's lines. A genius in the reverend gown must ever keep its owner down. 'Tis an unnatural conjunction, and spoils the credit of the function. Round all your brethren cast your eyes, point out the surest men to rise. That club of candidates in black, the least deserving of the pack, aspiring, factious, fierce, and loud, with grace and learning unendow'd, can turn their hands to every job, the fittest tools to work for Bob, will sooner coin 1,000 lies, than suffer men of parts to rise. They crowd about preferment's gate, and press you down with all their weight. For as of old mathematicians were by the vulgar thought magicians, so academic dull ale drinkers pronounce all men of wit free thinkers. Wit, as the chief of virtue's friends, disdains to serve ignoble ends. Observe what loads of stupid rhymes oppress us in corrupted times. What pamphlets in a court's defence show reason, grammar, truth, or sense? For though the muse delights in fiction, she ne'er inspires against conviction. Then keep your virtue still unmix'd, and let not faction come betwixt. By party steps no grandeur climb at, though it would make you England's primate. First learn the science to be dull, and then may soon your conscience lull. If not, however, seated high, your genius in your face will fly. When Jove was from his teeming head of wit's fair goddess brought to bed, there followed at his lying in for afterbirth a suitorkin, which, as the nurse pursued to kill, attained by flight the Muses' hill. Therein the soil began to root, and litter'd at Parnassus' foot. From hence the critic vermin sprung, with harpy claws and poisonous tongue, who fatten on poetic scraps, too cunning to be caught in traps. Dame Nature, as the learned show, provides each animal its foe. Hounds hunt the hare, the wily fox devours your geese, the wolf your flocks. Thus envy pleads a natural claim to persecute the Muses' fame. On poets in all times abusive, from Homer down to Pope inclusive. Yet what avails it to complain? You try to take revenge in vain. A rat your utmost rage defies, that safe behind the wainscot lies. Say, did you ever know by sight in cheese an individual mite? Show me the same numeric flea that bit your neck but yesterday. You then may boldly go in quest to find the Grub Street poet's nest. What sponging house in dread of jail receives them while they wait for bail? What alley are they nestled in, to flourish o'er a cup of gin? Find the last garret where they lay, or cellar where they starve to-day. Suppose you have them all trepanned, with each a libel in his hand. What punishment would you inflict? Or call them rogues, or get them kicked? These they have often tried before, you but oblige them so much more. Themselves would be the first to tell, to make their trash the better sell. You have been libelled, let us know, what fool officious told you so? Will you regard the hawker's cries, who in his titles always lies? Whate'er the noisy scoundrel says, it might be something in your praise, and praise bestowed in Grub Street rhymes would vex one more 1,000 times. Till critics blame and judges praise, the poet cannot claim his bays. On me, when dunces are satiric, I take it for a panegyric. Hated by fools, and fools to hate, be that my motto and my fate.
End of section 117. Section 118 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Directions for making a birthday song, 1729. To form a just and finished piece, take 20 gods of Rome or Greece, whose godships are in chief request, and fit your present subject best. And should it be your hero's case to have both male and female race, your business must be to provide a score of goddesses beside. Some call their monarchs sons of Saturn, for which they bring a modern pattern, because they might have heard of one who often longed to eat his son. But this I think will not go down, for here the father kept his crown. Why then appoint him son of Jove, who met his mother in a grove. To this we freely shall consent, well knowing what the poets meant. And in their sense, twixt me and you, it may be literally true. Next, as the laws of verse require, he must be greater than his sire. For Jove, as every schoolboy knows, was able Saturn to depose. And sure no Christian poet breathing would be more scrupulous than a heathen, or if to blasphemy it tends, that's but a trifle among friends. Your hero now another Mars is, makes mighty armies turn their arses. Behold his glittering falchion mow whole squadrons at a single blow, while victory with wings outspread flies like an eagle o'er his head. His milk-white steed upon its haunches, or pawing into dead men's paunches, as Overton has drawn his sire, still seen o'er many an alehouse fire. Then from his arm hoarse thunder rolls, as loud as 50 mustard bowls, for thunder still his arm supplies, and lightning always in his eyes. They both are cheap enough in conscience, and serve to echo rattling nonsense. The rumbling words march fierce along, made trebly dreadful in your song. Sweet poet hired for birthday rhymes, to sing of wars, choose peaceful times. What though for 15 years and more Janus has locked his temple door, though not a coffee house we read in has mentioned arms on this side Sweden, nor London journals, nor the postman, though fond of warlike lies as most men, for still with battles stuff thy head full, for must thy hero not be dreadful? Dismissing Mars, it next must follow, your conqueror is become Apollo. That he's Apollo is as plain as that Robin Walpole is Maecenas. But that he struts and that he squints, you'd know him by Apollo's prince. Old Phoebus is but half as bright, for yours can shine both day and night. The first perhaps may once an age inspire you with poetic rage. Your Phoebus Royal every day not only can inspire, but pay. Then make this new Apollo sit, sole patron, judge, and god of wit. How from his altitude he stoops to raise up virtue when she droops! On learning how his bounty flows, and with what justice he bestows. Fair Isis, and ye banks of Cam, be witness if I tell of Flam, what prodigies in arts we drain from both your streams in George's reign, as from the flowery bed of Nile. But here's enough to show your style. Broad innuendos such as this, if well applied, can hardly miss. For when you bring your songs in print, he'll get it read and take the hint. It must be read before 'tis warbled, the paper gilt and cover marbled, and will be so much more your debtor, because he never knew a letter. And as he hears his wit and sense, to which he never made pretence, set out in hyperbolic strains, a guinea shall reward your pains. For patrons never pay so well, as when they scarce have learn'd to spell. Next call him Neptune with his trident, he rules the sea, you see him radiant. And if provoked, he soundly firks his rebellious waves with rods like Xerxes. He would have seized the Spanish plate, had not the fleet gone out too late, and in their very ports besiege them, but that he would not disoblige them, and make the rascals pay him dearly for those affronts they gave him yearly. 'Tis not denied that, when we write, our ink is black, our paper white, and when we scrawl our paper o'er, we blacken what was white before. I think this practice only fit for dealers in satiric wit. But you some white lead ink must get, and write on paper black as jet. Your interest lies to learn the knack of whitening what before was black. Thus your encomium to be strong must be applied directly wrong. A tyrant for his mercy praise, and crown a royal dunce with bays. A squinting monkey load with charms, and paint a coward fierce in arms. Is he to avarice inclined? Extol him for his generous mind. And when we starve for want of corn, come out with Amalthea's horn. For all experience this evinces the only art of pleasing princes. For princes' love you should discount on virtues which they know they want. One compliment I had forgot, but songsters must omit it not. I freely grant the thought is old, why then your hero must be told. In him such virtues lie inherent, to qualify him God's vicegerent, that with no title to inherit, he must have been a king by merit. Yet be the fancy old or new, 'tis partly false and partly true; and, take it right, it means no more than George and William claim'd before. Should some obscure inferior fellow, like Julius or the youth of Pella, when all your list of gods is out, presume to show his mortal snout, and as a deity intrude, because he had the world subdued, O let him not debase your thoughts, or name him but to tell his faults. Of gods I only quote the best, but you may hook in all the rest. Now, birthday bard, with joy proceed, to raise your empress and her breed. First of the first, to vouch your lies, bring all the females of the skies. The Graces and their mistress Venus must venture down to entertain us. With bended knees when they adore her, what dowdies they appear before her! Nor shall we think you talk at random, for Venus might be her great grandam. 6,000 years has lived the goddess, your heroine hardly 50 odd is. Besides, your songsters oft have shown that she has graces of her own. 3 graces by Lucina brought her, just 3, and every grace a daughter. Here many a king his heart and crown shall at their snowy feet lay down. In royal robes they come by dozens, to court their English German cousins, beside a pair of princely babies, that 5 years hence will both be Hebes. Now see her seated in her throne, with genuine lustre all her own. Poor Cynthia never shone so bright, her splendour is but borrow'd light, and only with her brother link'd, can shine, without him is extinct. But Carolina shines the clearer, with neither spouse nor brother near her, and darts her beam o'er both our isles, though George is gone 1,000 miles. Thus Berecynthia takes her place, attended by her heavenly race, and sees a son in every god, unawed by Jove's all-shaking nod. Now sing his little highness Freddy, who struts like any king already. With so much beauty, show me any maid that could resist this charming Ganymede, where majesty with sweetness vies, and, like his father, early wise. Then cut him out a world of work, to conquer Spain and quell the Turk. Foretell his empire crown'd with bays, and golden times and halcyon days, and swear his line shall rule the nation for ever till the conflagration. But now it comes into my mind, we left a little duke behind, a Cupid in his face and size, and only wants to want his eyes. Make some provision for the younker, find him a kingdom out to conquer, prepare a fleet to waft him o'er, make Gulliver his commodore, into whose pocket valiant Williput will soon subdue the realm of Lilliput. A skilful critic justly blames hard, tough, crank, guttural, harsh, stiff names. The sense can ne'er be too jejune, but smooth your words to fit the tune. Hanover may do well enough, but George and Brunswick are too rough. Hesse Darmstadt makes a rugged sound, and Guelp the strongest ear will wound. In vain are all attempts from Germany to find out proper words for harmony. And yet I must accept the Rhine, because it clinks to Caroline. Hail, Queen of Britain, Queen of Rhymes, be sung 100,000 times. Too happy were the poets' crew, if their own happiness they knew. 3 syllables did never meet, so soft, so sliding, and so sweet. 9 other tuneful words like that would prove even Homer's numbers flat. Behold 3 beauteous vowels stand, with bridegroom liquids hand in hand, in concord here for ever fix'd, no jarring consonant betwixt. May Caroline continue long, for ever fair and young in song. What though the royal carcass must, squeezed in a coffin, turn'd to dust? Those elements her name compose, like atoms, are exempt from blows. Though Caroline may fill your gaps, yet still you must consult your maps. Find rivers with harmonious names, Sabrina, Medway, and the Thames. Britannia long will wear like steel, but Albion's cliffs are out at heel. And patience can endure no more to hear the Belgic lion roar. Give up the phrase of haughty Gaul, but proud Iberia soundly maul. Restore the ships by Philip taken, and make him crouch to save his bacon. Nassau, who got the name of glorious, because he never was victorious, a hanger on has always been, for old acquaintance, bring him in. To Walpole you might lend a line, but much I fear he's in decline. And if you chance to come too late, when he goes out you share his fate. And bear the new successor's frown, or whom you once sang up, sing down. Reject with scorn that stupid notion to praise your hero for devotion; nor entertain a thought so odd, that princes should believe in God, but follow the securest rule, and turn it all to ridicule. 'Tis grown the choicest wit at court, and gives the maids of honour sport; for since they talk'd with Dr. Clark, they now can venture in the dark. That sound divine the truth has spoke all, and pawn'd his word, hell is not local. This will not give them half the trouble of bargains sold or meanings double. Supposing now your song is done, to Mynheer Handel next you run, who artfully will pare and prune your words to some Italian tune. Then print it in the largest letter, with capitals the more the better. Present it boldly on your knee, and take a guinea for your fee.
End of section 118. Section 119 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
The Pheasant and the Lark, a Fable by Dr. Delany, 1730. In ancient times, as bards indite, if clerks have conn'd the records right, a peacock reign'd, whose glorious sway his subjects with delight obey. His tail was beauteous to behold, replete with goodly eyes and gold, fair emblem of that monarch's guise, whose train at once is rich and wise. And princely ruled he many regions, and statesmen wise, and valiant legions. A pheasant lord, above the rest, with every grace and talent blest, was sent to sway with all his skill the sceptre of a neighbouring hill. No science was to him unknown, for all the arts were all his own. In all the living learned read, though more delighted with the dead. For birds, if ancient tales say true, had then their Popes and Homers too; could read and write in prose and verse, and speak like Blank and build like Pierce. He knew their voices and their wings, who smoothest soars, who sweetest sings, who toils with ill-fledged pens to climb, and who attained the true sublime. Their merits he could well descry, he had so exquisite an eye; and when that fail'd to show them clear, he had as exquisite an ear. It chanced, as on a day he stray'd beneath an academic shade, he liked amidst 1,000 throats the wildness of a woodlark's notes, and search'd and spied and seized his game, and took him home and made him tame. Found him on trial true and able, so cheer'd and fed him at his table. Here some shrewd critic finds I'm caught, and cries out, better fed than taught, then jests on game and tame, and reads, and jests, and so my tale proceeds. Long had he studied in the wood, conversing with the wise and good, his soul with harmony inspired, with love of truth and virtue fired. His brethren's good and Maker's praise were all the study of his lays, were all the study in retreat, and now employed him with the great. His friendship was the sure resort of all the wretched at the court, but chiefly merit in distress his greatest blessing was to bless. This fix'd him in his patron's breast, but fired with envy all the rest. I mean that noisy craving crew, who round the court incessant flew, and prey'd like rooks by pairs and dozens, to fill the maws of sons and cousins. Unmoved their heart, and chill'd their blood, to every thought of common good, confining every hope and care to their own low contracted sphere. These ran him down with ceaseless cry, but found it hard to tell you why, till his own worth and wit supplied sufficient matter to deride. 'Tis envy's safest, surest rule, to hide her rage in ridicule. The vulgar eye she best beguiles, when all her snakes are deck'd with smiles. Sardonic smiles, by rancour raised, tormented most when seeming pleased. Their spite had more than half expired, had he not wrote what all admired. What morsels had their malice wanted, but that he built, and plann'd, and planted? How had his sense and learning grieved them, but that his charity relieved them? As highest worth dull malice reaches, as slugs pollute the fairest peaches. Envy defames as harpies vile devour the food they first defile. Now ask the fruit of all his favour, he was not hitherto a saver. What then could make their rage run mad? Why, what he hoped, not what he had. What tyrant e'er invented ropes, or racks, or rods, to punish hopes? The inheritance of hope and fame Is seldom earthly wisdom's aim; Or, if it were, is not so small, But there is room enough for all. If he but chanced to breathe a song, (He seldom sang, and never long,) The noisy, rude, malignant crowd, Where it was high, pronounced it loud. Plain truth was pride; and, what was sillier, Easy and friendly was familiar. Or if he turn'd his lofty lays With solemn air to virtue's praise, Alike abusive and erroneous, They'd call'd it hoarse and inharmonious. Yet so it was to souls like theirs, Tuneless as Abel to the bears. A rook with harsh malignant caw Began, was follow'd by a daw, Though some who would be thought to know, Are positive it was a crow. Jackdaw was seconded by Tit; Tom Tit could write, and so he writ. A tribe of tuneless praters follow, The jay, the magpie, and the swallow; And 20 more their throats let loose, Down to the witless waddling goose. Some peck'd at him, some flew, some flutter'd, Some hiss'd, some scream'd, and others mutter'd. The crow on carrion wont to feast, The carrion crow condemn'd his taste. The rook in earnest too, not joking, Swore all his singing was but croaking. Some thought they meant, to show their wit, Might think so still, but that they writ. Could it be spite or envy? No. Who did no ill could have no foe. So wise simplicity esteem'd, Quite otherwise true wisdom deem'd. This question rightly understood, What more provokes than doing good? A soul ennobled and refined Reproaches every baser mind, As strains exalted and melodious Make every meaner music odious. At length the nightingale was heard, For voice and wisdom long revered, Esteem'd of all the wise and good, The guardian genius of the wood. He long in discontent retired, Yet not obscured, but more admired. His brethren's servile souls disdaining, He lived indignant and complaining. They now afresh provoke his choler; It seems the Lark had been his scholar, A favourite scholar always near him, And oft had waked whole nights to hear him. Enraged he canvasses the matter, Exposes all their senseless chatter, Shows him and them in such a light, As more inflames yet quells their spite. They hear his voice, and frighted fly, For rage had raised it very high. Shamed by the wisdom of his notes, They hide their heads, and hush their throats. Answer to Dr. Delany's Fable of the Pheasant and Lark, 1730. In ancient times the wise were able, In proper terms, to write a fable. Their tales would always justly suit The characters of every brute. The ass was dull, the lion brave, The stag was swift, the fox a knave, The daw a thief, the ape a droll, The hound would scent, the wolf would prowl. A pigeon would, if shown by Æsop, Fly from the hawk, or pick his peas up. Far otherwise a great divine Has learnt his fables to refine. He jumbles men and birds together, As if they all were of a feather. You see him first the peacock bring, Against all rules to be a king; That in his tail he wore his eyes, By which he grew both rich and wise. Now pray observe the doctor's choice, A peacock chose for flight and voice. Did ever mortal see a peacock Attempt a flight above a haycock? And for his singing, Doctor, you know, Himself complained of it to Juno. He squalls in such a hellish noise, He frightens all the village boys. This peacock kept a standing force In regiments of foot and horse; Had statesmen too of every kind, Who waited on his eyes behind. And this was thought the highest post, For rule the rump, you rule the roast. The doctor names but one at present, And he of all birds was a pheasant. This pheasant was a man of wit, Could read all books wherever writ, And when among companions privy, Could quote you Cicero and Livy. Birds, as he says, and I allow, Were scholars then, as we are now; Could read all volumes up to folios, And feed on fricassees and olios. This pheasant, by the peacock's will, Was viceroy of a neighbouring hill; And as he wander'd in his park, He chanced to spy a clergy lark. Was taken with his person outward, So prettily he pick'd a cow turd. Then in a net the pheasant caught him, And in his palace fed and taught him. The moral of the tale is pleasant, Himself the lark, my lord the pheasant. A lark he is, and such a lark As never came from Noah's ark. And though he had no other notion But building, planning, and devotion, Though 'tis a maxim you must know, Who does no ill can have no foe. Yet how can I express in words the strange stupidity of birds? This lark was hated in the wood, because he did his brethren good. At last the nightingale comes in, to hold the doctor by the chin. We all can find out what he means, the worst of disaffected deans, whose wit at best was next to none, and now that little next is gone. Against the court is always blabbing, and calls the senate house a cabin, so dull, that but for spleen and spite, we ne'er should know what he could write, who thinks the nation always err'd, because himself is not preferr'd. His heart is through his libel seen, nor could his malice spare the queen, who, had she known his vile behaviour, would ne'er have shown him so much favour. A noble lord has told his pranks, and well deserves the nation's thanks. O, would the senate deign to show resentment on this public foe! Our nightingale might fit a cage, there let him starve and vent his rage. Or would they but in fetters bind this enemy of humankind? Harmonious coffee, show thy zeal, thou champion for the commonweal, nor on a theme like this repine, for once to wet thy pen divine. Bestow that libeller a lash, who daily vends seditious trash, who dares revile the nation's wisdom, but in the praise of virtue is dumb. That scribbler lash, who neither knows the turn of verse, nor style of prose, whose malice for the worst of ends would have us lose our English friends, who never had one public thought, nor ever gave the poor a groat. One clincher more, and I have done, I end my labours with a pun. Jove send this nightingale may fall, who spends his day and night in Gaul. So, nightingale and lark, adieu, I see the greatest owls in you, that ever screech'd or ever flew.
End of section 119. Section 120 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Dean Smedley's Petition to the Duke of Grafton. It was, my lord, the dexterous shift of t'other Jonathan, viz. Swift, but now St. Patrick's saucy dean, with silver verge and surplice clean, of Oxford or of Armand's grace, in looser rhyme to beg a place. A place he got, ye clept a stall, and eke £1,000 withal, and were he less a witty writer, he might as well have got a mitre. Thus I, the Jonathan of Clogher, in humble lays my thanks to offer, approach your grace with grateful heart, my thanks and verse both void of art. Content with what your bounty gave, no larger income do I crave, rejoicing that, in better times, Grafton requires my loyal lines. Proud, while my patron is polite, I likewise to the patriot write, proud that at once I can commend King George's and the Muses' friend. Endear'd to Britain and to thee, disjoined Hibernia by the sea, endear'd by twice 3 anxious years, employ'd in guardian toils and cares, by love, by wisdom, and by skill, for he has saved thee 'gainst thy will. But where shall Smedley make his nest, and lay his wandering head to rest? Where shall he find a decent house, to treat his friends and cheer his spouse? O, tack, my lord, some pretty cure, in wholesome soil and ether pure; the garden stored with artless flowers, in either angle shady bowers; no gay parterre with costly green, within the ambient hedge be seen. Let nature freely take her course, nor fear from me ungrateful force. No shears shall check her sprouting vigour, nor shape the yews to antic figure. A limpid brook shall trout supply, in May to take the mimic fly. Round a small orchard may it run, whose apples redden to the sun. Let all be snug and warm and neat, for 50 turn to safe retreat. A little Euston may it be, Euston I'll carve on every tree. But then to keep it in repair, my lord, twice £50 a year will barely do, but if your grace could make them hundreds, charming place. Thou then wouldst show another face. Clogher far north, my lord, it lies, midst snowy hills, inclement skies. One shivers with the Arctic wind, one hears the polar axis grind. Good John, indeed, with beef and claret, makes the place warm that one may bear it. He has a purse to keep a table, and eke a soul as hospitable. My heart is good, but assets fail, to fight with storms of snow and hail. Besides, the country's thin of people, who seldom meet but at the steeple. The strapping dean, that's gone to down, Near named the thing without a frown, when, much fatigued with sermon study, he felt his brain grow dull and muddy. No fit companion could be found to push the lazy bottle round. Sure then, for want of better folks, to pledge his clerk was orthodox. Ah, how unlike to Gerrard Street, where beaux and belles in parties meet, where gilded chairs and coaches throng, and jostle as they troll along, where tea and coffee hourly flow, and gape seed does in plenty grow, and Grizz, no clock more certain, cries, exact at 7, hot mutton pies. There Lady Luna in her sphere once shone when Pauncefort was not near, but now she wanes, and, as 'tis said, keeps sober hours and goes to bed. There, but 'tis endless to write down all the amusements of the town, and spouse will think herself quite undone to trudge to Connor from sweet London, and care we must our wives to please, or else we shall be ill at ease. You see, my lord, what 'tis I lack, 'tis only some convenient tack, some parsonage house with garden sweet, to be my late, my last retreat; a decent church close by its side, there preaching, praying, to reside; and as my time securely rolls, to save my own and other souls. The Duke's Answer, by Dr. Swift. Dear Smed, I read thy brilliant lines, where wit in all its glory shines, where compliments with all their pride are by their numbers dignified. I hope to make you yet as clean as that same viz. St. Patrick's Dean. I'll give thee supplice, verge, and stall, and maybe something else withal; and were you not so good a writer, I should present you with a mitre. Write worse then, if you can, be wise, believe me 'tis the way to rise. Talk not of making of thy nest, and never lay thy head to rest. That head so well with wisdom fraught, that writes without the toil of thought, while others rack their busy brains, you are not in the least at pains. Down to your deanery now repair, and build a castle in the air. I'm sure a man of your fine sense can do it with a small expense. There your dear spouse and you together may breathe your bellies full of ether. When Lady Luna is your neighbour, she'll help your wife when she's in labour. Well skill'd in midwife artifices, for she herself oft falls in pieces. There you shall see a raree show, will make you scorn this world below. When you behold the Milky Way, as white as snow, as bright as day, the glittering constellations roll about the grinding Arctic pole, the lovely tingling in your ears, wrought by the music of the spheres. Your spouse shall then no longer hector, you need not fear a curtain lecture. Nor shall she think that she is undone, for quitting her beloved London. When she's exalted in the skies, she'll never think of mutton pies. When you're advanced above Dean Viz, you'll never think of Goody Grizz. But ever, ever live at ease, and strive your wife to please. In her you'll centre all your joys, and get 10,000 girls and boys. 10,000 girls and boys you'll get, and they like stars shall rise and set. While you and spouse transform'd shall soon be a new sun and a new moon. Nor shall you strive your horns to hide, for then your horns shall be your pride.
End of section 120. Section 121 of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Parody on a character of Dean Smedley, written in Latin by himself. The very reverend Dean Smedley, of dulness, pride, conceit, a medley, was equally allowed to shine as poet, scholar, and divine. With godliness could well dispense, would be a rake, but wanted sense. Would strictly after truth inquire, because he dreaded to come nigh her. For liberty no champion bolder, he hated bailiffs at his shoulder. To half the world a standing jest, a perfect nuisance to the rest. From many, and we may believe him, had the best wishes they could give him. To all mankind a constant friend, provided they had cash to lend. One thing he did before he went hence, he left us a laconic sentence, by cutting of his phrase and trimming, to prove that bishops were old women. Poor Envy durst not show her phiz, she was so terrified at his. He waded without any shame through thick and thin to get a name, tried every sharping trick for bread, and after all he seldom sped. When fortune favour'd he was nice, he never once would cog the dice, but if she turn'd against his play. He knew to stop a quatretrois, now sound in mind and sound in corpus, says he, though swell'd like any porpoise. He hies from hence at 44, but by his leave he sinks a score, to the East Indies, there to chate till he can purchase an estate, where, after he has fill'd his chest, he'll mount his tub and preach his best, and plainly prove by dint of text, this world is his, and theirs the next. Lest that the reader should not know the bank where last he set his toe, 'twas Greenwich, there he took a ship, and gave his creditors the slip. But lest chronology should vary, upon the Ides of February, in 1728, to Fort St. George a pedlar went he. Ye fates, when all he gets is spent, return him beggar as he went.
End of Section 121. End of The Poems of Jonathan Swift, Volume 1, by Jonathan Swift.